This is a Hot Pie Media original.
Welcome to this episode of Overcome with Justin Wren. I am so excited about the guest. Amy's fist pumping over there.
That was a powerful intro.
I liked it. You like the intro?
Yeah,
boom.
You said it. You were feeling
boom,
it.
shakalaka.
Yes.
Well, we got a guy. I mean, we have the gorilla in-house that sits on the desk, but this is a gorilla mammoth of a man. He is an incredible human being, Aaron Alexander. You might have heard of his podcast, the Align Podcast. He's at Align Podcast on Instagram. Go give him a follow. You'll see me on there with him. We're doing all sorts of fun workouts at the Onnit ATX gym. But this guy has a new book. It's The Align Method. There's some incredible stuff. The subtitle is A Modern Movement Guide for a Stronger Body, Sharper Mind, and Stress-Proof Life. Who are two of the people I love that are on the front and back cover? Laird Hamilton is endorsing the book, the superstar of surfing for like the last 40 plus years. Also, Gabby Reese. Amy, we just had a conversation with Gabby Reese the other day.
We did. It was quite a trip to overhear you and Gabby Reese on the phone. So
why was it a trip?
Because you're two like high level pro athletes, and just the way you guys talk is not like it's normal to you guys, like it's just a different normal. It's a totally different normal. Just I can't remember it, but I just remember being like, wow, listen to them.
Who's the wonderful woman that she might put us in contact with? Byron Katie, is that the name?
Oh, yes. Who actually, funny you should mention Byron Katie. She has been a guest also on Aaron's show, his Align podcast. He's had some epic guests, you included. And yes, I'm a big fan of Byron Katie. I've done a solo cast just about the work of Byron Katie, and she's just, casually hangs out with Byron Katie.
Yeah.
But
and she could put us in touch.
She said she's, from another plane or something.
Maybe we'll have her on this show, but the person we have on this show, this episode, is Aaron Alexander, and he surrounds himself with some of the most incredible people. He is Gerard Butler whenever he goes on set location. I think he was in either Costa Rica or the Dominican Republic with him filming a new movie. And he was there to help him through his movement training. Also, I think Tobey Maguire when he's getting ready for Spider-Man or whatever other movies. And so he
moves like Spider-Man. I could see that.
He is the real life Spider-Man, Superman. He looks like a superhero. We intro him with a fun analogy of who he reminds me of or better than, literally looks like Michelangelo carved Aaron Alexander.
But not only is he physically quite a specimen, but his mind always amazes me, like how much he retains. I wish I had that sort of mental retention.
Yeah, recall.
And he is just so smart and can spout like facts and all sorts of stuff that's really really incredible.
And he's funny. He even in the episode, he does a fun callback to something pretty funny
that we talked about in the beginning to the David. And but we did work through a really cool 4 or 5 minute breath work.
Right.
How'd you feel after we did this breath work?
I felt great. I
did too. I felt kind of high while we were doing it.
I did during the first one, and I could hold my breath pretty long. In the second one, I don't think I held my breath as long because I don't think I blew out all the way, like just cleared my lungs, completely emptied my lungs. I would suggest if you're going to listen to this episode, we get into that breath work at about 20 minutes, something around there, actually 20 minutes after this intro, 15, 20 minutes after. And I would encourage you to please do it because you will see some noticeable differences in your life, in your biology, in your makeup, in your mind, your body. You really get into your body, which is your first and really your only home on planet Earth. I mean, it's the vehicle that takes you anywhere and everywhere.
Yeah.
You can't escape your shadow.
I think that's probably a really well put thing about what this conversation's about. It's about tuning into your home.
Yeah.
Like how tuned in are you to it and how intentional are you around it and aware? And what are your goals with it? And he has a great way of breaking that down and really just putting it into terms that speak to us and don't get stressed out about, oh shit, now I need to go, pay attention to regenerative farming or whatever, just like take it step by step, take it in stride.
Yeah. Take it in stride. And at the end, I said something about I'm supposed to. And he's like, well, you're not supposed to.
He's
you
like,
get
quit
to,
supposed to. Yeah. Quit the supposed to.
This is a very interesting conversation. It goes all over the place, but I'm really happy to support him on his book launch, book tour, and please go out and get one of his books. Also, don't forget to subscribe, rate, review to this podcast. A review would really help us. I would ask that of you. If you're enjoying these shows, please let us know what you think of certain episodes, what you think of the podcast as a whole, and we'll learn from that. We'll grow from that. And we really, really appreciate your support of this podcast.
And share it with a friend.
Yeah.
If you think of, I always say this, and I do this, if you think of anybody, if anybody pops in your mind and you're like, they would like this, send it to them. Just send it to them. Because so often that's our intuition telling us something. So I think that's really a great practice.
Yeah. And so now we are about to get into this episode. Buckle up, Buttercups, because this is a great and fun ride. Yeah. With Aaron Alexander, a stud of a human. Thank you, Amy, for being here. You're so beautiful.
I'm thrilled to be, basically a glorified fly on the wall in these episodes. And I learned so much.
Yeah, I learned so much from Aaron. I know you will too. So let's get right in to Overcome with Justin Wren and Aaron Alexander. Well, real quick before we get into some breath work, Aaron, I love you. Thank you for being here on this show.
Yeah, I'm so grateful to be here. I genuinely, some the appropriate, I don't know if we're recording or not, but are we recording?
I think we are.
Okay.
It's all right either way.
So the appropriate thing is to always be grateful. And, sometimes I think we kind of grab ourselves by the neck and take ourselves through those motions. So we have to feel like there's an obligation.
Right.
On the way here, I genuinely had this overwhelming sense of gratitude to get to come and get to hang out with you. So thanks for doing this.
Thank you. I appreciate you. I know Amy and I both are stoked. You're one of our favorite people. Likewise. And so this is awesome. Your book is launching. We're going to get into that, but we're going to get into some breath work.
Yes, sir.
And before we get into the breath work, I was just thinking earlier, I was looking into the statue of David. Michelangelo did that, right?
Yeah.
I think that's such a cool statue. And then I started thinking how it was carved or chiseled out of marble. And I was just like, what would it be like to walk around looking better than the statue of David?
Wow.
And that's you, my friend.
Equal size genitals.
I don't know about that. You have a hole in your jeans right now.
That's correct.
But you're
right here to express it.
I love it.
I'm distracted by
he's got underwear on. It's a contrast.
I think
it's a dark.
Do you know the story of having little genitals on those statues?
No.
I think it was considered barbaric to have a big cock at the time.
Ooh.
I think there's probably some king or ruler that had a micro P. And so then it's kind of like the
all statues must be smaller than him.
Smaller wheeze.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was the Spanish accent, if you're from Barcelona.
Yeah,
that lisp comes from whoever the king ruler fella. He had a lisp.
I didn't know that.
And so, anyone else, as opposed to making fun of him as his little lisp, it's no, we all have lisp, bitches.
Yeah,
sorry,
I didn't know that. Speaking of Spain, real quick, I was telling Amy that there's a culture in Catalonia, wherever Barcelona is. I went there and it was awesome. I actually ended up. Yeah, there we go. Catalan. Yes. Yeah. And I forget the state, but I remember the town, the city. And I ended up on a Viking ship with a Norwegian sailor and or captain. And I was out in the bay of Barcelona. And then we also found out about do you know about Cacatillo?
Mm-mm.
It's a Christmas tradition they have only in Barcelona. And it's kind of like Elf on the Shelf, but it is these sticks that have googly eyes and a Santa hat on. And they start as a little twig. They get bigger and bigger and bigger until it's a full log, 12 days before Christmas, something like that. They put it over a blanket over it at Christmas Eve. When the kids come out with a stick, they start beating the stick. Anyways, Cacatillo is the pooping uncle. And that's how they get a lot of their presents on Christmas Eve. Anyways, random cultural experience.
I know we're supposed to do breathwork, but the origins of Christmas are largely psychedelic influenced.
No.
Siberian shamans. That's the origin. That's the origination of Christmas
Siberian
and
shamans.
Saint Nick. Yeah.
Yeah, they look like they would be under Saint Nick.
So all of your presents, the traditional red and white wrapping around presents and, like ornaments and such on a tree, that red and white, do you know what the most notorious, famous, well-known mushroom on the planet is?
Ah, yes, the red one with the white specks.
Yeah, the Amanita muscaria. It's like the Super Mario mushroom. Makes you get superpowers.
Yeah.
Psychedelic, I don't know, history is infused all throughout our popular culture. It's so interesting. And so that white and red is representative of the Amanita muscaria mushroom, and the ornaments hanging off of a tree is actually at the time. They would hang the mushrooms off of these pine trees to dry them, to dehydrate them.
Wow.
And then the presents underneath represent the mushrooms. And the Saint Nick, the Santa Claus, he was this shamanistic figure that would go out, harvest the mushrooms, and then bring them to these towns, these villages in Siberia. The reason he would come down through the chimney is because there was so much snow at the time. And so he would drop the gifts down the chimney. And so he'd drop these psychedelic gifts down the chimney.
Wow.
And it was like this realization, reincarnation, new beginning of yourself.
Okay. Well,
Jesus Christ also potentially is either representative of a mushroom. So says the Dead Sea Scrolls. There's a lot of contention around that as well. Or also he was, again, like a shaman. And so the whole like death and rebirth is that process of going through and like your ego dying. And perhaps the Bible is an allegorical tale to represent the psychedelic journey. Bam!
Damn.
That's how we start a podcast.
Woo! The more you know. I think we need to have one of those shooting stars. The more you know. And Santa Claus does look like a large gold garden gnome. He does, like from a field of mushrooms.
A big red and white.
Did you know I've played
red and white garden gnome?
Yeah. Did you ever see me as Santa Claus? I'll have to show you pictures. That's why I have the red sled. That's why I have the red sled. I've been Santa Claus for 45. I plan on being the youngest Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade Santa of all times.
Love that.
Yeah. No, I have 20 years of experience.
Isn't it kind of
45?
Isn't it kind of sad that there's like immediately this sense, there's like a leeriness around any grown man that has any affinity towards children.
Huh.
You know?
Yeah.
Like, oh, you'd be saying, it's like, oh boy. As opposed to being like, oh, that's amazing. Like, love the kids.
Yeah. Well, I've seen the opposite side of that but I've been going to like a children's hospital for Oklahoma DHS with like, basically they're the children that were so sick that they were basically either taken under the state's care or the parents abandoned them and no one was there to care for them except for the state. And so going there a couple years and going to the foster care homes and centers and the children's hospitals. That's been my favorite thing to do. I've never been paid to be Santa, but I have a dope white beard. Anyways, maybe too much info, but don't use the nail polish brush they have in the white beard paint. Use a toothbrush. That's the Santa secret to really get the white in there so it doesn't get clumpy.
There's like 1.5 listeners that are like, yes, taking notes.
Yeah. well, maybe they can take notes on our breath work.
I had the same issue.
Well, also to give people some insight on who you are, Amy and I both have come to be really close with you over 2021.
Yeah.
We're starting a new year, and you said that you were grateful for our relationship coming in here, but man, I think Amy and I both are just incredibly grateful that you're in our lives. You're in our lives. There's people that I know and love that are grateful that you are in their life. I mean, just looking at the cover of your book, The Aligned Method, Laird Hamilton said the foundational principles for unlocking peak human potential. Laird Hamilton, Mr. Malibu, a pro surfer for I think over 40 years. I think he's like 57, 58, something like that.
He's inarguably the GOAT.
The GOAT. And he's the founder of XPT, right? The underwater. I've done that workout with him. 11 feet deep. He's like coming out with dumbbells, doing backflips, like barely his nose is coming out, but he's like a human fish with weights, like a bodybuilding fish. And that. Gabby Reese, his wife, pro volleyball player, co-founder of XPT. She said, if you've ever wanted to feel more confident, capable, and at home in your body, but didn't know where to start, this is the book for you. I mean, that's pretty amazing. At home in your body. I think there's such a disconnection between people actually thinking of their body as their home because we've externalized it so much. We need to build this mansion, or we need to retreat to this place that is our home.
Yep.
And not enough people get into their body, learn from their body, listen to their body so they can learn from their body, so they can actually love their body, love their home and where they're at. And that's what we're going to talk about here today. But maybe we can, is it okay to start with,
I would love that.
Let's do some breath work. I think
it's such a cool thing.
Let's get at home in our body.
So Wim Hof, he also, he had a blurb in there as
an endorsement in your book. That's awesome.
Yeah. So he was
the Iceman himself.
Yeah. But the reason I say is he was helpful with the nose breathing chapter particularly. And so we include some of his practices in there as well. It's not really his practices per se, breath work, breathing in various different iterations.
Been doing that for thousands of years,
time,
right?
A lot of the influence of exposure.
Who do you think invented breathing?
Oh, it's a good question. Who invented? Probably prokaryotes. I would say 3.8 billion years ago or so. There was some clever prokaryote out there that was respirating.
Yeah. Do you think he was Buddhist or Hindu or
probably agnostic? An agnostic prokaryote was the initial inciter of
I don't know. The more and more that I've lived or gotten to know the almost our original man, the pygmy people, the oldest tribe in Africa at least. It's like, man, they've got such deep spiritual beliefs that are just part of their history and part of their being. When they're at home in their body, they just feel connected to God, the universe, all that.
There was, we're going to keep on just putting off the breathing stuff because
I just got my green juice with my green foam. I'm going to lick it and then we're going to breathe.
Yeah, lick that green juice. So can we get a close up of Justin Wren licking the green juice cap, please?
I don't know. Here it is.
Zoom in.
There's some
zoom
foam.
in. There we go. Yeah, that's the money shot.
If you're only listening,
there we go.
You're missing out. I did get some green foam on my
thing. Maybe a little POV of the green juice. Let's breathe.
Let's breathe.
All right.
Let's do it, man.
So
Amy, join us in breathing.
I'm going to. I've been into nose breathing because I just read Breath by James Nestor.
Cool.
And been mouth taping.
Yeah.
She's been mouth taping at night.
When I was under stress, when he relapsed and stuff, I started snoring randomly like a couple nights. And so I was like, well, no way. So I started mouth taping.
Great.
Took it right out.
Cool. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah, mouth taping. We include that the nasal breathing, nose breathing chapter in the Align method essentially summates. The intention of the book as a whole was to be a summation of lots of specific books on specific topics wrapped up into one field manual to inhabit your body more effectively, essentially, to do physicality better.
Yeah.
So the nasal breathing chapter includes a lot of that stuff, including the mouth taping stuff.
Mouth taping.
Right now, like officially out.
But when this goes out, it goes out January 11th.
Okay, cool.
The book is out.
Right. It's out. It's out.
It is out.
It is out.
It's out and about.
And what's really great, man, I love you. I love all the knowledge you have. And really, just to read the Align method, the subtitle is a modern movement guide for a stronger body, but not just that, a sharper mind and a stress-proof life.
Yeah, stress-proof is an interesting one. And we can talk about all that stuff.
But
but that's like our bodies thrive on variability and on challenge and on stressors. But you need to have the container to be able to hold the stress effectively.
Yeah.
And if the body is already exhausted, or impinged, bound, adhesed, it's like, think of like a building. If a building is missing some of the primary supports in the structure, then you add weight to the system.
It's not going to support it.
It's problematic.
Yeah.
Yeah. But if you were to...
It could be a collapse.
Yeah. But if you say that you released gravity entirely, you're like, wow, there's no stress. Well, now the building just floats away. So there's a certain level of weight that actually holds the structure in place, and it's supportive to it.
Earlier today, I was at something called IOP, which is Intensive Outpatient Program for my substance use disorder and the treatment, getting out of rehab or residential and going to this, where you can tackle real life challenges while you're, in IOP. So it's a safe place, but you're out in the real world. I'm living with Amy. I'm going to work. We're doing this podcast, but I can take things and break it down in real time, the stressful situations that come up. But one of the things I saw on the wall today, someone wrote down, there is no growth in your comfort zone. There isn't comfort in your growth zone. So it's like to grow.
That sweet spot.
you have to get uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And that's jujitsu, being comfortable, being uncomfortable.
And that's the value of being a good coach, good parent, good friend, acknowledging where someone's boundaries are, or even boundaries within yourself, and being able to skirt those boundaries and respectfully nudge them without just blowing through them, or not even, the other side of that would just be being too afraid to even get close to them.
Yeah.
So if you can be in that place where you're subtly nudging into your boundaries, that's a hermetic stressor, like exercise or anything of the sort. And the person that exists in that space for the longest time wins.
I love that. Well, breath is really important for every single person listening to this. Yeah. And we're going to breathe a little. It took us 20 minutes to get there, but
so the reason that this is is relevant, we weren't going to record this. We're like, we'll just record it so people can do this at home, or fast forward 3 minutes, if you don't feel like doing a breathwork practice for yourself, that's fine too. But the reason that this is relevant is it touches on a few different parts of the book and life, and utilizing your breath as a tool to either upregulate, stimulate your body, stimulate your mind, or downregulate, calm yourself, get ready for bed, get ready for sleep.
I love that.
And, there's also a conversation of, Wim Hof stuff became popular, which is essentially kind of like you're like hyperventilating. And then, but along with that is the breath hold. So both of those work, they pull on different levers. That hyperventilation increases norepinephrine and cortisol and all the kind of it puts your body into this endorphins, into this ready state to fight, flight, do something.
Right.
So it can be helpful with cognitive function, helpful with energy levels. But it's not I think a common misconception or confusion is the reason that doing those breathing patterns is helpful for something like maybe like a cold plunge.
Yeah.
It causes this, it's called a stress-induced analgesic effect. It makes you kind of a little bit like, I can barely even feel the cold. What you'll hear oftentimes is people saying it's because I think it relaxes you so much. And then you go into the cold, you're just so relaxed. No, it's putting you ready for fucking war.
Yeah.
And then you go in and the cold's not that bad. It's like something that you've experienced, more than most people, of getting brutally punched in the face, or maybe a broken bone or something, but you're in the heat of whatever the situation was. And in your case, it'd be like an MMA fight.
Right.
And you're like, hit me again.
Yeah. But the times that I don't do breath work before I get in the ice, it's always harder. It's always harder when I don't, and I mean, even just 3 deep breaths.
Sure. Yeah.
Like when I get in there and I wasn't focused at all on my breath and I get in the cold.
Yeah.
It is harder to stay in there for 3 minutes, 5 minutes, 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Than it is if I just took 3 big deep breaths. And then when I get in there, it tries to steal or take my breath away.
Sure.
And if I'm not focused on lengthening that breath. And I think I could relate it right back to you. You came over to our house and you were feeling under the weather, and then we found out you had COVID, but you had the vid, and you got over it really quick. But you also did the ice and you did breath work, and I saw you doing that. You were in the sun outside, in crisscross applesauce. No, I mean, you were stretching, sitting down on the ground, and you love to do that. You're sitting. How do you say that? Is it Native American
cross-legged,
cross-legged?
Sukhasana, if you want to say
yoga. That's what I was.
I like crisscross applesauce.
Crisscross applesauce.
It's like how
studio chair. It's like how you're the only one I can see.
It's like how a baby would sit.
But I like it. It's you're the only one that sits in the chairs like this, and I love it. Yeah. It's very distinguishable for you.
Thank you. I feel distinguished.
But I think that it's one of the reasons you're so healthy, and helpful, because you're so focused on your body, how you can constantly improve, how you can help others be encouraged to improve their own well-being.
Yeah. And
so we can do that through breath now and the rest of this conversation.
Yeah. And then, so the other, thank you. And the other side of the breathing aspect. So understanding that your senses are a part of your fitness, or part of your physiology. Right. So when you hear certain tones, frequencies of sound, it causes you to feel a certain way. You hear a crackling of a fire, or maybe like a dog snoring, or, a waterfall. All of that's like, oh, wow, it's calm.
Yeah.
Suddenly you hear some blaring siren. Even me right now, slowing down, my voice maybe got like a little bit, deeper in that moment. I could, maybe I'm projecting, but I could feel both of us like calm down a little bit.
I think of the waterfall.
Right.
I love.
And the visualization of the waterfall, which that's a really powerful thing as well, which we can talk about, the scientific evidence collaborating or corroborating a lot of the things that people say about like visualization being an effective tool. It's like, no, there's legitimate evidence from Western science to suggest that visualization actually is incredibly powerful.
Right.
But so your breath is one of those tools that you can tap into if you understand how to utilize it. You know, vision is another one. Like all of the senses affect the way that you produce yourself at a hormonal level. So the breath hold part, or reducing the amount of air that you're taking in, that's going to be helpful. One, with just making your body more effective at releasing oxygen from red blood cells. So if you're over breathing throughout the day, you're kind of like at a cellular level, you're kind of like a wasteful slob, right? So if you're just getting so much air all the time, your hemoglobin, your red blood cells, they're like, okay, this dude's just at a buffet of air all the time. I can be as ineffective as I need to be, or as I can be, and it's no problem because he just has air everywhere. But if I slow down, I start to cultivate a little bit of you could call it an air hunger, then suddenly those red blood cells become more effective actually at releasing, unbinding that oxygen to be more effective at distributing throughout your muscles. And so as we are doing this breathing practice, that huffing and puffing, hyperventilation thing, great. And that puts you into this kind of, in the book, we describe it as like fifth gear.
Right.
And I borrowed that from Brian McKenzie and some other people who he also helped with the breathing chapter. So that puts you into that kind of peak state. You're having sex, or you're climbing a mountain, or you're finishing a marathon. You're getting those last little bit, or you're in a fight.
Yeah.
And then the opposite is that slow, long exhalation, nasal breathing. It puts your body into more downregulated, calm state, and also makes your body more effective at delivering oxygen throughout your muscles. So both of them are invaluable,
right?
And they're both tools.
Yeah, it's like being well-rounded. That's need
correct.
the right tool for the right moment.
Yeah.
So we should be most effective.
So let's go through it.
Yeah.
So the reason I like this is I just think it feels nice. It feels nice. You know, selfishly, I think it's a beautiful thing to do before having a conversation. So all we're gonna do is you're gonna sit yourself up into, again, if you're not into this kind of thing, fast forward 4 minutes and you're fine. So you're going to sit yourself up into an upright position. When you are sitting, avoid the sensation like there's a stick up your ass and you're really like astute, military posture. Like relax. If you are sitting on the ground, or maybe even sitting on a chair, you can put your hands down on the bottom of the chair and kind of lift I can't because the chair's not wide enough, but if you have a wide enough space, you could lift your butt up off of the ground, hold it for a second, then just drop yourself down and find that kind of set point that your spine stacks into. Another tip is keep your hips up above the height of your knees if you want to have effective spinal mechanics while you're sitting. If you're on a chair, if you're on the ground, if you're doing yoga, whatever you're doing, get a block, put it underneath your butt. When you're sitting down, your hips ideally are up above the height of your knees. That stabilizes your sacrum, stabilizes your lower back. And then from there, you can stack your diaphragms and your whole body can relax. Next thing, just take a moment, feel in your body. So getting out of the way of breathing being a thing that we're doing, but more a thing that it's a happening. So there's nothing to do. You're not working. You have the opportunity to experience. And then we're going to go into just 30 breaths. We'll just do this twice. And you're going to breathe in through the mouth. So we're going to kind of crank it up into that like fifth gear zone. You could also do this through the nose. Would be a really beautiful thing to do. It's much better breathing mechanics to go through your nose, but we're going to crank it up, go through the mouth. We're going to do 30 big breaths. So it's going to be like this. So big, strong inhalation, and then you just allow it to fall out. Big, strong inhalation, allow it to fall out. Try, if you can, bring that breath into the sides of the ribs, get it down into the low back, into the belly, not just all the way up into the neck. We're going to go 30 breaths of that. And then on the last one, exhale your air. You can breathe in the background right now if you want. You're going to exhale all your air out, and you're going to hold that breath about 10 seconds beyond comfort level. And then you're going to take another breath in, hold it for about 20 seconds, and we'll do that again. So that's the cycle. We will begin now. Hold the breath. Hold for just about 20 seconds. Take a few normal breaths. And then we'll get right back into it. Last round. Typically do 3 or 4 rounds. Holding just beyond comfort. Big full inhalation. Hold. As you're in this position, clench your pelvic floor muscles. Bring your chin back, elongating the back of your neck. Look up with your eyes. Imagine there's a string pulling the back of your head up towards the ceiling. Keep squeezing the P muscles. Keep elongating the neck, chin back, get long. And relax. And we're back, bitches. That's good shit.
It's good. I felt...
What's that in part two, where we were tightening our pelvic floor muscles and looking up?
You're saying, what does that in part do with the pelvic floor?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, it's a big part of what it does is it's helpful with creating some contraction elongation through that whole spine. And then the looking up with the eyes. There's a few interesting things with looking up in the eyes. There's a lot of like esoteric Eastern philosophical underpinnings to that. If you go to any kind of like breathwork classes and maybe like a yoga space or something like that, they'll suggest that. Some of the Western anatomical speak, when you're looking up with the eyes, it's helpful with inducing creativity. It's helpful with concentration. It's helpful with like engagement. When you're looking down, it puts you into more of like a restful state. Mm-hmm. You know, so it's like you're turning on that whole channel, and the visual aspect is kind of is turning on, you know, nice. The visual channel. Why it's helpful with in Western culture is, you know, our many reasons why it's helpful. Our eyes are kind of like glued down and to the right towards our phones, you know, and so those visual muscles, you can do this as an interesting kind of experiment right now. Bring your hands behind your back of your neck. It's called the suboccipital ridge, those bundle of muscles right underneath the skull, and just look forward. Now look up with your eyes, down, up, down, up, down, up, and you'll feel those muscles engaging. Yes. You feel that, wow. Amy?
Yeah.
I've never known that. So looking up or down, you can feel a muscle at the bottom of your skull, top of your neck.
Yeah.
Literally contracting.
Yeah, it's called the suboccipital muscles. Weird. And so well, not weird at all. It's totally, it's totally sensible. You know, think in any type of sport, your body follows your eyes.
Well, even thinking about being a hunter-gatherer, you have to be scanning the forest or the savannah or the plains.
Yeah. So
looking for an animal, looking for a bird, looking for something.
Yeah. Yeah. So those
looking for predators to protect yourself.
Yeah. So neurons that fire together wire together. So when you are, I didn't make that up, but that's something that's said in these conversations. When you are using those muscles to look up, you know, most of the time when you're looking up, you're also going to be looking up with the rest of your musculoskeletal system. Mm-hmm. In this case, like your neck.
Yep.
You know, and so your eyes, think of your visual muscles kind of like reins on a horse. Your body's the horse. All those tendrils tying back from the visual muscles are the reins. Huh. And so when I'm looking up, I'm pulling the reins back. I'm activating those muscles throughout through my spine. When I'm looking down, I'm going to have the inverse of that essentially. And so you can even feel if you're looking down and to the right, then you're going to be activating the muscles to kind of pull your musculoskeletal system, your spine down to the right.
I literally saw my body move. I felt my shoulders move whenever I looked down and to the right.
I studied my left shoulder came forward. And like one of the things that they tell you to do, like in TV acting where the movements are smaller, are just to look with your eyes, you know? And like really when you start doing that and you just look at someone with your eyes, it feels so counterintuitive.
You'd have to decouple it.
Yeah, you do. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so, I mean, unless you're like practicing some specific decoupling acting technique or something like that, your body is an integrated system, you know? And so if you're having some type of muscular imbalance or, you know, aches and pains or you want to improve athletic performance, tying your visual muscles into the function of the rest of your body, your musculoskeletal system is invaluable.
This podcast is brought to you by Onnit. Onnit.com/overcome. Oh, I already drank an Alpha Brain and it was absolutely great. Today, I drank the pineapple punch flavor in my drink. What did you have, Amy?
I had my Total Human, which includes Alpha Brain. So I'm doing my night support, my day support. I'm feeling really good right now.
Yeah. And Aaron started with a blackberry lemonade flavor of the Alpha Brain Instant.
One of my favorites, actually.
Yeah, that one's super good.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just so thankful to onit.com/overcome for supporting this podcast, for being a supporter of Fight for the Forgotten. And they are just so incredible to me. When I went to treatment, what did they do? They continued to support, saying, we are behind you. I got to go share with the executive team, with the coaches, with my workout partners, one of being Aaron Alexander, who's always up there with me. And thank you so much, Aaron, for being on the show. But also, if you want to support this podcast, please do by going to onit.com/overcome. Take care of your personal health, your nutritional health. Get some Alpha Brain because that will support your brain health, but also their krill oil support your joint health. Get your vitamin D spray. I've been using their vitamin D. My favorite fruit in the world is passion fruit. The passion fruit flavor spray, just 5 sprays on my tongue a day. Yeah. You didn't know I was doing that?
When are you doing this?
It's under the sink. On my side of the sink.
What?
It's incredible.
You're
I love it.
Totally
we need to get you some.
hiding this from me.
I wasn't hiding
want
it.
Some.
It's really good. It's my favorite flavor of anything they've
I
made.
didn't even know you had that or were doing it.
Yeah, so I'm getting my vitamin D up
back.
because with Ways to Well, I found out that my vitamin D levels were too low, and I need to have that for one, to fight off depression, anxiety, depression, or my addiction, but also for COVID, all that stuff. You need your vitamin D levels up high. So I'm getting that through my vitamin D spray with Onnit. So get yourself a savings right now, 30% off of the Total Human at onit.com/overcome. Save yourself 10% on any of their supplements store-wide. Don't forget their fitness equipment. They have the great kettlebells, the Indian clubs. They have all sorts of goodies there. I have my shaker bottle here, the Onnit blender bottle, and you will be very happy.
Yeah, and give it as a healthy gift to people like your SO. Your significant other.
Well, that's what I'll do. I'll give you some
D
of that.
in their mouth. That sounds totally dirty, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. And hey, also remember this. You can try a free trial of basically anything. I at least know you can have a free trial of Alpha Brain. If you haven't tried it yet, please do. Why don't you try a second? If I have tried it in the past, why don't you try their Alpha Brain Black Label? You can get a free trial of that. I think of Total Human, but I know of New Mood, which New Mood is an awesome way to, if you have stress in the day, anxiety, you can take it any time of the day and you won't get tired, but also a great way to relax before you go to bed. New Mood with their 5-HTP and everything else that's in it that's really, really good. So thank you, Onnit, for supporting this podcast. Go to onit.com/overcome. Save yourself some money. Take care of your health. Also help us take care of the show and Fight for the Forgotten. Thank you, Onnit. I love you. Absolutely love you. Thanks so much. Onnit. Man, the thing that I love about you is there's people that take care of their health because they know they should. Or there's people that take care of themselves because it's kind of vain in some ways. But you just live and breathe and eat this shit up, taking care of yourself.
It's like a hobby.
And helping others. It's a hobby. It's a job. It's a way of life.
Like some people are into like cars or like guns. I like cars and guns, but I also like.
You love the human body.
The body.
Yeah. You love your human body, other people's bodies. Like you inspire me in that way, man. And you can teach me and have taught me so much about physical health, and we get to go up to Onnit and work out there, and we're always changing it up and having fun. And I consider you a coach and a mentor, but also just a really great friend and workout training partner. And part of my journey, get back into the cage and fighting. Yeah. But I mean, I also think we can have a great topic of discussion for both physical health, mental health, how those things all tie in together, and almost spiritual health, because this is a way of life for you. Yep. You live it, you breathe it. And one of the questions I had while you were talking with Amy, especially about the eyes and everything, I don't know why that triggered it, but of course it makes sense. And so I thought about what's something really simple that just makes sense that you could expand upon. And I was like, how much different, how much better would people's lives be, anyone listening to this, if they just drank more water, ate better foods, and slept more?
Yeah.
I mean, just
so simple.
Hydrate, eat well, sleep better.
And move.
Yeah. Right. And move.
Yeah.
I mean, would that be most people? It's a night and day difference if you just intentionally did those things.
Yeah. I mean, if anything is really convoluted, complex, like Einstein has a quote, something like, if you can't teach it to a fourth grader, you don't really understand it. I don't know if he said fourth or third or fifth or whatever, but you can't teach it to like a young elementary type person. You don't get it yet.
Yeah.
Until you can draw the analogy back into like a choo-choo train of, red blood cells going through the cardiovascular system or whatever, like that's when you're like, like it's actually not that complicated.
Yeah.
And with all of the minutia of the perfect blend of supplements and am I keto enough or carnivore enough or vegan enough, or, there's so many different fads and trends that are transpiring all the time. And I think all of them are fine. I'm not like mad at anything. But that being said, there are consistent truths like the foundational bedrock that just does not change. Getting outside, exposing yourself to nature with regularity doesn't change.
Yeah.
Moving your body with some level of regularity, there's like maybe different iterations of that. There's like the hard hitting CrossFit, competitive, high volume, high speed type workout. And then just totally maybe after that, for some people, they might have it's called an illusory invulnerability, as some Chinese researchers came up with a term for that, where you exercise a lot and then you feel like, okay, cool, now I can just screw off and eat ice cream cones and just like lay around and watch Netflix all day.
That's me. The Chinese guys.
It's a lot of people.
They discovered that about me.
That's
Here.
It's a strange. Awesome. It's a really strange aberration of physical.
It's weird. It's weird that function. you think that. I was actually about to share this a minute ago. Is like it's unique that you're saying move, not unique.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of people think once I worked out, now I earned rest.
That's a weird way to live.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the idea that like I earned my ice cream cone, or I earned my cheat day, or I earned to me, if that works for you, I love it. I'm so open to whatever people are into. If you're a breatharian, I'm like, that's so cool. I love that. Tell me if it doesn't work for me. Doesn't seem intuitively.
Breatharian?
Yeah. There's like people that claim they
just breathe.
Yeah, and like sunlight, they can derive prana energy, whatever. It's a bunch of I don't.
So like good for them if it works, but what would your ideal way be? You're like, okay, that the working out so you earn your rest. What's the ideal for you? What works for you?
Overlaying the principles that have been consistent throughout millennia in our ancestral history, at least the stories that we would tell ourselves about that, into our modern world. So the way that you would live in pretty much any type of hunter-gatherer type setting would be, you would move a little bit throughout the day with occasional bouts of higher intensity.
Yep.
You would rest with the cycles of the sun, which I'm not the best at. I'd really like to sort that out with myself. I tend to get up to bed closer to like 11 or 11:30. It'd be so cool if I got to bed at like 10 and it was like up at 6.
Yeah.
So that's something that I have some work within myself. But when I do that, I feel better for sure. So have a really strong, consistent relationship with the sun. When the sun's out, do the stuff. When the sun's down, start to adapt yourself to red light. So maybe light some candles in your place, maybe get some salt lamps. Maybe if you have a fireplace, that's so cool. Like light a fire would be so rad, so romantic. Yeah. Like being these things that would be deemed to be like romantic for the most part are just things that would organically happen in nature.
Yeah. Well, you're saying that. And I love that perspective because I have a unique perspective because I lived with hunter-gatherer tribe for a year at one time and 2 years in total now over the last 10 years. And their way of life, they only go into their hut, which is twigs and leaves, literally twigs about the size of our thumb, and then leaves like banana leaves or elephant ear type leaves. And you can literally not just punch, but poke a hole through your wall in your ceiling, right? The only time they go in there is to rest and to sleep at night. And but it's not like a comfortable place where you go retreat to and board yourself off from humanity or your neighbors.
Right.
It's like they wake up early when the sun's coming up, right before their circadian rhythm or whatever is already waking them up because it's time to start the day.
Yeah.
The women go out and gather. The men go out and hunt whenever the sun is up, and it's the canopy of the rainforest, so they're normally in the shade. But after they try the hunting in the morning, and if they get something, they come back, they cook it up, they eat, they feast.
Yep.
But if they miss it, they come back and they rest. They take a small siesta, I don't know what Swahili, actually, Lala Salama. And they take a quick nap, and then they get up and they go back out and do it again. They're moving.
Yeah.
Unless they're working for somebody. But the way that they live together, they move, they're walking through nature and the sun, and they're watching the moon and the animals, and it's just a beautiful way of life. They're not sitting down all day in a cubicle.
But they are resting a lot though. So that's a misconception. The other thing I would add in that, like overlaying the more ancestral approach to existence into modern day living, would be the way that we eat. So understanding the sourcing of your food.
Right.
Like that, not that crazy of an idea to be like, cool, if I'm going to eat a piece of beef, or an apple, where did it come from? What's the story? Is it doused in pesticides? Has it been injected with antibiotics? Was it stacked on top of its brothers and sisters and feces and on like a concrete, slab, polluting the rivers? And like you are continuous with your environment.
Yeah.
And so if you're a part of voting with your dollars, which I think is like one of the prime, like most meaningful votes that we have, is what we actually purchase for that style of husbandry, or that style of animal welfare, animal care. That will trickle back into the water that you drink and that your kids drink, and the soil quality, and so on and so forth. And it's really easy to villainize people who eat animals because they have faces. But if you're monocropping a large swath of soil, think of the thousands of creatures that you're destroying in the process of that. Yeah. And then
the pesticides are clearing.
And then you're tilling that top layer of soil. All right. So now you're releasing this massive amount of carbon dioxide up into the atmosphere,
right?
Because that's where it's all stored. And you're also taking out those perennial plants, which those roots go deep down in the soil and pour water down through, and affects with the groundwater, and then all of the fertilizers and stuff that you're putting on that soil. It just rolls out into the waterways. Now it's into the fish. Now it's back to you.
Yeah.
So you're not a hero because you don't eat things with a face. Like, we're continually transferring energy through plants and fruits and vegetables and animals and all that. It's the sourcing it's the same thing. The bedrock consistent conversation with any food is, what is the sourcing?
Yeah.
The bedrock consistent conversation, like there's continual truths throughout. And then there's the minutia that we argue about on social media.
Right.
But understanding that sourcing, I think, is more valuable, is valuable beyond just the nutrients that you're getting on your plate in that moment. There's like a karmic imprint to it, to not just you, but your friends, your family, your kids, and the longevity of Earth. Yeah,
that's really interesting, because I, training for fights, I get sometimes a lot of meal prepping, and sometimes I do, sometimes I don't know where the source is. And then there's other times that I have fluctuated, right, from really not caring because I'm just hungry, or other times I really do care. And I've been exploring more, thinking about more, how could I get a partnership with a person, whether they're local here in Austin, or some farm that they truly treat their land almost like I saw my pygmy family doing over in Africa, that like they're like one with the land. They care for the land. They care for the animals. They do that stuff. And out in California where you were, there's Belcampo. Down in Georgia, there's another one.
Not anymore, but yeah, look up any regenerative. They closed down, but any regenerative farm, like ideally the human
regenerative farming. That's the word.
Yeah.
Sustainable regenerative farming.
And having ruminant animals, cows or elephants or buffalo, or big creatures that are stomping around, pooping and peeing, fertilizing the ground. They are perpetuating the growth of healthy topsoil. Mm-hmm. So they can take potentially desertified land and our marginal land, and suddenly actually be sequestering carbon and making it fertile for future crops to come. So it's about working with, not working on top of. So it's the same concept. Everything that I do with the book or anything, like most of my thoughts around movement are largely inspired by permaculture. So how do we make our fitness with our life, as opposed to our fitness, this compartmentalized thing that we do for 40 minutes, 3 days a week? So how do we make our nutrition, our farming practices, how do we make that with nature? And one really beautiful solution for that would be supporting regenerative farms.
Right. And what do you say would be the easiest, lowest hanging fruit for not just that, but for implementing these things in our daily life? I know that you have so many suggestions and great tips and tidbits and ways to live this through your book. So I'd suggest everyone to go get the Align Method. And where can that be found?
It'd be great if you walk to a bookstore.
Yeah.
They're be great. Targets and Barnes and Nobles or whatever. But Amazon's where most people probably will just press a button.
But go to a bookstore, because that's actually, I know that from publishing my own book, or having a book that was published by Simon & Schuster. The bookstores were better for the nonprofit and me, and Simon & Schuster was getting it at an actual bookstore. Was more supportive. So if you can go to a bookstore, get the Align Method for sure. If you can't do that, then get it on Amazon secondary. But I think that the original question that I was going to ask on that was, what's the easiest, lowest hanging fruit to be able to start implementing these things into your life? Like when I'm with you, it doesn't matter if we're here on the podcast or if you're at our home or I'm at your place, or if we're at a restaurant, you are moving, you are stretching, you are sitting in ways that, like, I just look at it now and I'm like, wow, I wish I did more of that. And so for me, or for anyone listening, like, to be healthier in body and mind, we're going to get to the mental health side of things too. Yeah. But I think by being more in your body, making that more at home, being more intentional with that, the side effect is that we are mind and body and spirit, that you will improve mental health by improving your body.
Yeah. I mean, well, one, we're already talking about mental health, but the second part, you become the product and shape of your environment. Winston Churchill has a quote that I included in there is first we shape our houses and then our houses shape us. So you have these ideas and concepts of like, oh, cool, we'll put maybe we'll do like a bar area there, and that way we can kind of have like a party and we can do drinks there, and we have people have like a dance floor spot. I'm going to put a stripper pole in the corner, or I'm going to do a couch and a dinner table and a big screen TV and
TV trays,
some TV trays. We'll put some chairs around the bar there, and then there's not a lot of space for much other stuff. So we'll make it kind of like a Netflix area, So you come into your home and your only potential is
you're primed
kitchen, cook stuff. There's nothing that's down below the height of like your knees, essentially. So you're never going to get your hips down below the height of your knees. So that's going to probably be pretty much a lost space for most Westerners. Your toilet, down to 90 degrees, your bed down to 90 degrees, everything in your kitchen down to, whatever, you can like lean over and grab it. Your couch, 90 degrees, or just like kind of like falling onto it. Your car seat, your plane, your train, your automobile, like your desk, every aspect of your life is in this archetypal hunched over. If you saw any animal in nature in this position, you'd think they're sick or depressed position.
Wow.
It's crazy.
Sick, sad, or sorry. Yeah.
Crazy. When you think when you actually stand back and observe without the stories and definitions of what it means to be a successful person, and like, your fancy car, and like the door opens for you and the trunk opens for you, and then you kind of just plop yourself into like the bucket seat, and then you kind of get out. It's like the only thing missing is if there was like a wedge to kind of pull your ass out of the car. Like that would be that would be the next level of convenience for the car. It's like everything is just done. And it just allows you to be in that same position, archetypal screen position. And I'm not even mad at that position. It's fine. Like whatever you're into, it's totally great. But first define what are your goals and where do you want to end up? And from a mental, emotional, structural, physiological perspective, I think most people probably would prefer some strength, some flexibility, some adaptability.
To be able to move in old age. Yeah,
longevity is the big one. And the number one leading, and this kind of all ties back, and the number one leading reason for elderly needing assisted living is fall risk.
Huh.
I mean, it's
because they've been so stationary.
Been not so stationary because they lack that range of motion of the hips going below the height of the knees. It's an abandoned position in Western culture. Crazy.
It is crazy. I'm thinking about I can relate it back to the pygmy people again, but their chairs are stones or logs, or sometimes they make these little stools out of sticks, or it's the ground and they're in this deep squatted position. And for the first two months, I think I got it around starting on month 3, but I didn't have a toilet, right, for a full year, like not one time. And so no running water, and I would dig a hole in the ground. And sometimes I was trying to use a tree with my back and doing those like wall sits to have a bowel movement.
Oh yeah. All the pygmies were like, this Western asshole. No. Literally and figuratively.
Do you want to know the real story of the Western asshole? I went to this village, Antiquaqua. It means the place of rebels. And I was the only one with toilet paper, right? And so
it's so weird.
Yeah.
If you got some fecal matter on your forearm, would you ever just rub some bleached paper into it? Like, we're so dumb. Like Western culture, I mean, we're brilliant. Like we're going to the space, and we have Elon Musk, and we, like, there's so many cool, like, technology. You have all the answers to every question ever in your pocket. Like, we're incredibly intelligent, but physically we're divorcing ourselves from that.
Yeah. So I was out there, and you're right. I had a stomach bug. I had something called Shigella, which is like an intestinal bacteria that can literally somewhat, in younger, like babies and stuff, they can get over it pretty quick with medication. But whenever it really sets in on you as an adult, like, it can like dissolve your intestines and stuff. It's pretty brutal. And so I got that and was out there, and it hit me. And it's just kind of one of those things where I'm in a new village, new night. We got there after dark. We hid our truck behind trees, and then with trees, like the branches, like hiding like trying to camouflage our truck. We get out there after dark. The reason we camouflaged our truck was because there was a shot up 18-wheeler lorry that they had shot up, looted, all that stuff. Just, we drove past that like right before we're parking in this village, and we're like, oh shoot, like that just happened. So we better hide this thing. So I get out there, and then all of a sudden my stomach hits me, and I'm like, where am I going to go? I haven't been shown around the village. I don't know where they normally go. And it's just out in the forest, but I just wanted, anyways. So I take a little footpath. I take another footpath. I think I get off the path, and here's a log. I get on the, like this big log, walk across to get to the other side. And now I'm like surrounded by like, it's basically like a creek, and it's dark. So I don't know where to go. I get back on the log. I start walking, and all of a sudden my stomach, it hits me. I have no time to find anywhere else. And there was this hole in the tree, the trunk of the big log. And so I just dropped it right there and went to the restroom, but I have the toilet paper. So I used that, put it in there. I was going to collect it the next day or whatever, come back and cover it up. And anyways, I didn't have a bag with me, didn't have enough time. So the next day, I don't know, have I told you the story? I haven't, right? Yeah. No. So next day they're taking us on a tour. And it's the chief, it's the elders, it's their wives, and they're all walking us around, showing us, how not to get lost and die in the middle of the rainforest. And, there's elephants out there, there's leopards, there's different things. So they're showing us like where their domain is out in the forest. And what I love about the forest is it's always alive. I mean, the birds, the monkeys, the insects, you're hearing it at all hours. You're never alone. And so we're walking, and all of a sudden I see us go to this footpath, and then all of a sudden they're jumping on this log, and I'm like, surely that's not the same one. This looks different, but it was. And anyways, they like stop, and they're having to jump over that, and they're like looking down, like, what is that? Who would do that? What is that paper? It just didn't make any sense. I was obviously embarrassed.
What an interesting metaphor.
I was just thinking like, how goofy is this? That one, I didn't realize that for the next 10 months, or at least 9 months, when you're in that deep of a squat to have a bowel movement, kind of like the squatty potty helps you do, you don't need as much toilet paper hardly at all, because you're just more open.
Yeah.
It's more open.
It literally elongates.
It's quicker.
It elongates the rectum. So it's called the anorectal angle. When you are in a standing position, your rectum will go into more of an angled position. There's a muscle called the anorectalis that wraps around the front of it. And puborectalis that wraps around the front of it. And when you go into a deep squat position, that muscle relaxes and your anorectal angle, your poop chute, elongates for you to have a healthy defecation.
Yeah.
So it's literally it's modernity in many ways, as brilliant as modern culture has been, with technology at least. Physiologically, we're like working against ourselves.
Yeah.
And the toilet is a perfect example of that.
Yeah.
Like it literally puts your body at a disadvantageous position to have a healthy poo. Yeah. Meanwhile, people have constipation and hemorrhoids and, like even just the concept of toilet paper is just another idea where it's just like, that doesn't make sense. Like water.
I feel like it's really trending right now to the movement away from toilet paper, or maybe it's just on my algorithm. I don't know.
You guys would appreciate Mickey Agrawal. She's a good friend. She lives here in Boston.
I've met Mickey, and she's a total badass.
Tushy.
Yeah. We've talked about Tushy. We rent, so we haven't put it in our house.
Oh, it's not a big deal. Just buy one. It's like I think they're like $70, $80 or something like that, and you just strap it on. It's a short amount of time to get it on there.
What's your ideal bathroom setup like?
Well, from that, have a squatty potty, or if you're
for you, like if you had your dream.
Oh, I would
bathroom,
probably.
What would that be?
I mean, I honestly, I like Latin America and Asia, where there's a platform, like 2 feet positions, and you go and take a poop like you would in the woods.
Yeah,
it seems crazy, like it seems like this barbaric idea, but it's actually like way more supportive. And then ideal. Hold on, ideal.
That's what I want.
Ideal is that, and also outside. So I had some friends in a handful of locations in my life that have had this set up, like an outdoor toilet situation, outdoor shower situation, all that. So ideal would be having a vista. Get some natural sunlight, have a vista, be able to look out over the horizon.
Poop with a view.
Poop with a view. And so what's helpful about that as well is, again, your visual system's tied into the rest of your autonomic nervous system. So when you are in that panoramic viewing mode,
better.
Literally better. Oh yeah. Yeah. It's not wise for you to hunch up onto your toilet, stare into a cell phone, and take like a hemorrhoidal constipated poo that takes you 9 minutes. Wow. It's very weird.
Wow. To get your toilet ready.
Listen up, everybody.
It's weird, but I think I mean, I don't know that colon cancer has increased, but I'm sure with everything we put in our bodies and then how we don't actually empty our colons completely because of the position we're in. Like it's always constantly sitting there. So there's just lots of complications. I'm not saying that's the cause of, I'm not a doctor. I'm not saying that's the cause of, no, I'm not a doctor.
Justin Wren is not a doctor?
Not a doctor, ladies and gentlemen.
I'm out of here.
Making me call you a doctor.
I only talk to doctors.
But okay, so to switch from that though, to go from that shit to the shit up here in our minds, in our head.
Yeah, same.
Like how do you get that out? How do you help people in areas of mental health? I mean, it says right here, sharper mind, stress-proof life.
Yeah. Well, what
are some of the key takeaways?
I mean, so there's so much. One, there's you could draw whatever kind of like, I think most people it's pretty easy for most people to grok that when your body feels good, you feel good.
Yeah.
Right. If you feel fast, if you feel light, if you feel flexible, if you feel strong, you step up, you're doing a deadlift, you're jacked up, you're like, whoa, like nothing could hurt me. Right. You're going into the octagon. You're stepping in, you're like, you got your strut going, you're like, oh, like you just feel like I'm impervious to anything. That's a musculoskeletal, structural, physiological, mental, emotional entanglement. Mm-hmm. That's always happening. So if you are practicing a position to feel, and we'll get into some this is kind of more just speaking, like from a logical, intuitive place. Like it's like most people can get that, I think. And then there's the anytime you're doing some type of study, backing things with scientific evidence, you're isolating specific variables to paint a picture that the researchers were intending to paint in the first place. So most all of the data is kind of noisy.
Yeah.
Because it's like we're painting a picture with research for the most part. But that being said, there's been a ton of research comparing antidepressant medications like Zoloft and the various ones to aerobic exercise, and pretty consistently across the board, they're like comparable.
Yeah.
And the value with that, and there was actually, people could look. There was I think it was 2006. There was a meta-analysis of, I think it was 11 different research studies, all testing the same thing, and they're all like, "Yep, exercise. That's it's at least at par with antidepressants." That's not saying if you're having some type of, I'm also not a doctor, and not a psychiatrist or a psychologist or anything of the sort. So talk to somebody about it. But if the person that you're talking to about it isn't including any lifestyle recommendations, talk to somebody else.
Yeah, for sure.
Like
if they say, here's a pill for that, and that's it.
Yeah, talk to somebody else.
Not
like,
here's how to stay away from taking the pill, or you have to take this pill and supplement it with.
Yeah, cool. You rolled your ankle a couple weeks. Here's a crutch. This isn't my solution.
Yeah.
This isn't, I'm saying, cool, here's a crutch for the rest of your life. I'm saying use this crutch for just as long as you need it. Because now, again, your whole structural system is starting to form itself to that crutch.
Right.
A healthy person doesn't walk with a crutch. And when you're doing that, now suddenly you're activating this whole orchestra of movements that's totally different than locomotion, like typical gait patterning. So I don't want your musculoskeletal, your neuromuscular system to adapt to the shape of that crutch. I would hope that if you are seeing someone that's recommending some type of pharmaceutical medication, there's some plan to say, okay, things are bad. Like in this moment, I think this will help us get, across the river. Now, after that, we have the raft. Now, how do we start to like let go of the raft and like teach you how to walk through the woods? And so that's an interesting thing that exercise is at least at par with medications without the deleterious side effects, which is like massive. And then along with that, you're starting to change, not just your lifestyle, but you're literally changing your whole physiology. Now, suddenly maybe you're a little bit more confident because, you don't feel overweight. Maybe the bags under your eyes are starting to go away a little bit. Maybe you're starting to get some complexion in your skin. Maybe you're starting to get now enough vitamin D levels, and which is also associated to not only immune conditions but depression and all things.
Absolutely.
If you're a dark person, if you're a black person, you're from Africa, you're from Middle East, you're from some place that gets a lot of sun, and suddenly you move to Portland, Oregon, you need to go out of your way to get all of the sun. Or you're asking for, issues, particularly around depression and things of the sort.
Yeah.
What is it called? Seasonal
affectation disorder, seasonal
something.
Is that Seattle, Portland,
like SAD, right?
Yeah. That's also a standard American diet. But yeah, and so it's like exercise.
Seasonal affective disorder.
Yeah, that's the word. Thank you. So exercise ideally isn't just I am a rat and I am running on a wheel and I am moving my parts with no affect, and no emotion and no engagement and no community and no problem solving and no music and no nature and no variables. That's movement. Our concept, because largely our minds come from two-dimensional textbooks, because that's what we learn from, and most of the conversations that we have like this are based off of, empirical research and meta-analysis and studies. And, so it's like most of that is still contained into a box. And we try to fit that box into our organic system. There's still separation there. So the concept of getting into like the magic of movement and the magic of nutrition and the magic of relationship. And could you imagine some research study really breaking down the entirety of love, like the meaning of love? Like no way.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen with movement either. Like a part of coming to a place where you're really, like living that life is letting go of all of the stories.
Letting go of the stories. Yeah. We listened to that in the meditation that Aaron and I had before we came in. I showed him the show. I showed him the song I found yesterday with Trevor Hall, The Old Story, that Amy and I had a powerful moment with last night. This Old Story, the Old Story by Trevor Hall.
And then where that's interesting, I wanted to talk about this when we were listening to the story song. There's a story in the way that you move, right? So like you're like a chapter book, so every event that you've had recently, you rolled your ankle.
Yeah.
That's imprinted in your physical story.
Yeah.
If someone has a knee thing or a hip thing or a scoliosis or a forward head posture or anything, if you're a sensitive person that understands some level of kinesthetics and of movement, or you're just generally sensitive, you could be able to kind of start to parse that story apart immediately upon meeting somebody. We met a whole bunch of people here, today before this. Each person had their own movement story.
Right.
And I'm like so enamored by, just like, looking into it, playing with it. I'm not always right, but it's another way. It's like learning about space, and so if you just look up to the stars and you're just like, cool, like black stuff, light stuff. Okay. Back to Instagram, but if you look up to space and you have an astronomer with you, and you spent maybe 3 hours in an observatory and they're breaking down like black holes and gravity and orbits and like the earth is moving. However, the heck fast, 23,000 miles an hour. I'm making that up. We're moving real fast, and you start to input some data into like what's really going on here. You look up into the sky and you're like, wow. It's like awe-inspiring.
Yeah, for sure.
And so that same concept, it's like if you just become interested in the way people move and the stories they're telling, suddenly, one, life is just more interesting and more engaging. Two, you become more effective at life. Let's just add one thing with that. When people there was some research that we included in the book as well that was done taking inmates that were in jail for violent crimes. And they showed the inmates various different people walking down the street and asked them who would be your target, like who would you be your ideal target of these people. And the differentiating factor wasn't sex, it wasn't race, it wasn't anything. It was
it posture? No.
Yeah, it was postural patterns.
Wow.
So their level of the language they used was wholeness.
Okay.
The wholeness in the way they move. The original meaning of health is whole. It's like an old English word. I think it's like help, whole. So when a person moves with wholeness, you're like, I don't want to mess with that person. They have potential to defend, to run, to like they're integrated. I'm like, ugh. It's like this. There's like this aura around that person, and I don't know much about auras and stuff, but maybe there actually is. I'm kind of joking about that. And so it's a person that feels like they know where they're going. They have like an intentionality about the way that they're moving, and there's not dysregulation or disorganization. If you're disorganized, you're easy to pick apart. Same thing in fighting.
Same thing in fighting, for sure. I can exploit someone's weakness once I just watch the fight film. Yep. I'm like, they got a tendency. It's almost like in poker, you're picking up on their tells.
Yep.
He's telling me something with the way that he's moving.
Yep.
The way he's dropping his hand here, with the way that he's stepping with his foot over here instead of doing it the right way.
Yep.
And that's interesting because you are so interested in people's story from movement, but also in their lives, that you were able to pick up on one thing with me that no therapist, no doctor, no New York Times bestselling author of like these psychology and different things could pick up on for me. And it goes back to my bullying story. And ironically, I think that finding wrestling was my way out of being bullied. But from like 8 years old to 13 years old, and there was stuff that happened at another school, there was stuff that happened at home, but I started going to a new school from the very first day I was bullied. First day of third grade. That was the first day that I was actually bullied by a bunch of kids. it was like, I think my body language, I think the way that I was timid, I think my haircut, I think the way that I became heavy set all of a sudden and when depression at a young age was clinically diagnosed at 13, I think all those things had me carry myself differently to where I would be a loner. I would sit at the lunch table by myself after trying to sit down with some people and them saying like, no, not him, because of the way I probably presented myself at that young age.
Sure.
To where at 13 years old, whenever I threw away my costume, I went to this costume party and I was a Dr. Pepper transforming. And when I threw away the cardboard box and the 24 pack on the head, 12 packs on the arm, and the duct tape on my hands, or I had the duct tape on my hands and pushed up the dumpster, and there's probably ice cream from Dairy Queen where I ran away to and threw this stuff away. I had sticky hands. I don't know if you remember that part of the story. And
you're
like,
aversion to sticky hands.
Yeah. And I absolutely have I've worked through it a lot actually since our conversation on your podcast.
Yeah.
But that used to drive me wild having, I was never OCD about anything else really much, but when it came to sticky hands, I had to clean them.
Yeah.
Had to get them clean because after that moment I had the sticky hands from the dumpster and wrapping my arms around my legs, which also had duct tape on it, the residue of the duct tape and the stickiness of that. I never related that to that. And no therapist, no doctor or counselor had ever pointed out, I wonder if that's why you don't like sticky hands. Yeah. But in our conversation, you picked up on it right away.
Yeah, those clues are everywhere. The thing that you said in that I think is really interesting and relevant and probably not spoken about enough or thought about enough is even so one, language is incredibly powerful.
Yeah.
So the idea that I carry myself is also a recapitulation of a story that I have to do something to be effective.
Yeah.
To I have to hold myself up. I have to keep my shoulders back and I have to, it's like the way like that Alan Watts has a bit about that. He says like that most people, if they lay down on the ground, they have this subconscious fear that they'll like disappear or turn to jello if they actually relax. And so when they lay down on the ground, they still have these tensional like hold and their shoulders are up and their, maybe their pelvic floor muscles are tightened or maybe their abs are tight. There's so many people that I've worked with doing Rolfing and various different forms of manual therapy where like they cannot unclench their abs. It's like this impermeable wall. You will not touch this vulnerable part of me. You're not getting in. And then through lots of different, we have all sorts of different exercises and things like that we do. Eventually they start to slowly open up. But that person that walks around the world from the place that I have to hold myself together all the time, it's fine for a moment. You can hold yourself together and get through from point A to point B. But from a longevity conversation, if you're in a place where you're continually actively engaged to kind of just like work through this thing, it's just incredibly tiring. And eventually you're going to get worn out. Coming back to the martial artist person, the person that would be, and again, I all about this. I don't. So please, like at any point, just, correct. But if you were able, hypothetically, you found a person that was maybe more like Bruce Lee, like say, he'd be an obvious one to come back to. Muhammad Ali, he had like a levity to him as well that I feel like perhaps it would be harder to track his patterning because he's so supple, so relaxed. He can go into some type of pattern and then reset back into relaxation.
Yeah.
Go into pattern, set back into relaxation.
Rafael Lovato Jr., who's going to be on the show. He's the only man in martial arts that I've ever in my entire life felt claustrophobic underneath.
Interesting.
And I've trained with at least 5 guys at heavyweight that were training for the UFC championship fight or were champions or the current champs. I could get put in worst case scenario with them. They could have full mount. They could have my back. And that's where we would start from so that they could maintain position, try to finish the fight. Right. Yeah. And I would never freak out. I would never feel like, and they might get the best of me and starting in that bad position and we restart. But I never felt actually physically claustrophobic. The reason is because Rafael is so in tune with his body, lifelong martial artist, that he knows just turn an inch here.
Yeah.
Take my body up an inch there. And if I had to compare him to something, his weight, although he's only 185 pounds when he fights, but he's 6'4", so he's really long. He is so intentional about every single movement and having all his weight on you, not any of it on the floor, that he's taking your wind away, your breath away. And it's like almost like a wet blanket of like hot melting Velveeta cheese on top of you to where you can't breathe. You can't get it off. You can't get away. He's just smothering you. Yeah. It's almost like a fire hose being pointed at you of that hot melted Velveeta cheese that you can't get away from. It's just swarming you. It's overwhelming you. And it's not, I'm a big, strong guy.
Yeah.
Big, strong guy that whenever we come together, it's not rock versus rock. Like he's going around it. He's going under it. He's going over top of it.
Yep.
He's just flowing all around to where it's not this big clash that normally at heavyweight, you have this big clash with these guys and who's going to win.
And that's a product of muscular intelligence, and then I would say muscular intelligence is also, will tie into every other part of your humanity. So I would think when you're learning a new skill, say you're trying to rollerblade for the first time, or you're playing ping pong for the first time, or anything, what you'll do is you'll close down certain joints in the body because you're trying to stabilize.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so now suddenly you have this really like stiff, rigid way to do it because you're like, okay, I only have so much bandwidth to focus. There's such a cacophony of information going on right now. I'm just going to tighten up and close everything down and just kind of like swing the racket.
Yeah.
And so what you're doing with this, so then it's like, okay, now it's like an effective piano player. It's about the keys that they don't hit. So an ineffective piano player is like, it's just like all the keys are getting smacked. An ineffective mover is smacking a lot of keys. An effective mover that's just had that time to just work on those reps and feel so relaxed and calm. It feels almost magical.
It does.
Like that's like, magicians would be a great example of that as well. It seems like what they're doing, it's like it's impossible for you to be so good at this, but it's because they're so relaxed because they've practiced for so long. And so with magicians or martial artists or dancers or any of that, all of that, sometimes I think those conversations can be interesting, but almost like alienating in a way, because it's like, well, I'm not any of that.
Yeah.
I'm 39-year-old Selma.
So let's talk to 39-year-old accountant Selma.
So you're always like, you are a martial artist. You are an athlete. You are a singer songwriter. You are a musician. Like your vocal cords, that's like the original instrument. We've been making instruments. I think that the oldest instrument goes back to, I believe, I read it was 43,000 years ago. It's called the Devje Bob flute. It's like the femur of a cave bear. I think it was in Slovenia.
Okay.
And so 43 odd thousand years ago, there was, a dude or a gal inside of a cave carving out from a femur of a bear some device to be able to make pretty sounds from. Like we've been making music since the beginning of forever, and your voice, ultimately, it's just, we're singing to each other and we have definitions in our mind of what certain song lyrics or tone mean.
Right.
I just went off for a second.
Yeah.
And so as we're communicating to each other, that physical intelligence, when you meet someone that seems like it's like they have this effortlessness of the way that they come into the room. They're like, wow, like this, I apologize for being so quotations. There's a Charles Bukowski quote. He says, when he talks about this as being a free soul, says it's, you don't necessarily, they don't have like a specific, I have it in the book, it's paraphrasing, something along the lines of a free soul. It's like, they don't look like a thing, or they don't have a specific, character or anything like that. But when you meet a free soul, because you feel good, like you feel really good, and that free soul, there's also, we're conveying information with our body language. So when someone comes in the room and their jaw is not tight and their hands aren't tight and their shoulders aren't rolled forward and they're not like, maybe their hips are shifting towards the door, or maybe they don't like to make eye contact. That's body language. That's how you communicate. Yeah. That's how you convey information.
More so than with your voice.
Yeah. Voice is like, there's another study done in the 60s from, I think it was Stanford, from Albert Morabian. It's just 7% of our communication comes from body language, comes from voice. Or the words. And then 38% comes from the tone of our voice, and then 55% comes from body language.
Wow.
And that's if there's incongruence. So if we're hanging out, I say some stuff to you,
could just be
but
words.
My tone doesn't match what I'm saying, and my body doesn't match what I'm saying.
You're not facing me, you're not looking at me.
Yeah, 93% consistency, I would think it'd be even more than that. If you're any level of a sensitive person, you'd be like, I don't trust what you're saying. So when we're communicating to each other, like if you want a great wife or a husband or a girlfriend or boyfriend, or
I want to marry that woman right over there,
or a great job, or just a general sense of like joie de vivre as you're moving through the world, you're continually sending messages in the form of, the fancy term for it is postural feedback. Your postural feedback is continually conveying messages to the outer world around you, just like an antenna sending frequencies. And then people are receiving that message and responding to you. And then you call it dumb luck that you got the job, or that you ran into that person in the street at the right time. It's because you're a fucking magnet with the way that you move through the world. People are like, I want a piece of that guy, or I want to stay away from that guy, or I want to take advantage of that guy.
Yeah.
And I don't get why every darn relationship with or that I'm in, it's like a different face, different name, same person, same abuse. It's like, well, there might be something going on with the way that you communicate through the world.
Yeah. I wonder if you know anything about this, and I think Amy would be pretty interested in it as well. There's some group, the Global Conscious Coalition or something like that, that they have a project out there, and it's about cardioneurology and and they did something with, oh man, it's in my other notebook. I'm going to slaughter it. I had to tell someone about it the other day. I was actually the docuseries director, and it's in my other notebook. So anyways, but there's a thing that, one of the things I took from it is that your heart sends twice as many messages to the brain than your brain sends to the rest of the body.
Yeah.
And that's what forms in the womb first, is your heart over even your brain. And that there's so much stuff about follow your heart, listen to your heart, all that, and your gut and all those other things. And we're so logical or up in our head so often. I think that's a lot of times where the mental health issues come from, is just we're in our head, not in our body.
Yeah.
We're in our head, not in our heart.
Sure.
We took a moment to get into our heart space before coming in here to do the podcast. Like, take a few moments, sit down on the ground, meditate.
Do a little prostate massage.
Yes. Well, that's why your jeans are ripped.
It was awesome. It was awesome.
Easy access.
Easy access.
Deeply relaxed.
Yeah. But I mean, what do you know about the heart and just operating from that place over your mind?
Well, I mean, so this is again one of those interesting intersections where in the book, the back description, we describe it as Eastern philosophy meets Western mechanics. And a lot of the stuff that some of this esoteric, woo-woo, metaphysical, kind of like throwaway stuff that a lot of yoga teachers will say. And most of like the dudes, bro dudes in the class are just like rolling their eyes like, oh my God, why did my girlfriend bring me here? A lot of that stuff is backed by science. Yeah.
And science is catching up with it.
Exactly. And another interesting example of that is the vagus nerve, which is, another popular one people talk about these days.
Is it part of the parasympathetic nervous system?
Yeah. But it's vagus, it's like Latin, like vagrant, wanderer, so it's tying from the brain and spinal cord to a lot of different organs.
Okay.
But what's interesting about that is, again, we think so much of this as being like a top-down conversation. The brain is like the grand emperor of everything that's happening in your body. But 70% of the nerve fibers in the vagus nerve are afferent, meaning they're going from the body to the brain. So 30% brain to the body, sending information. 70% is sending information from your viscera, from your organs, to the brain, saying, here's what's going on. We need some help in this department, or like, we need to move in this way, or think in this way, or release hormones or neurochemistry or whatever it may be in this way to address what's happening from the body.
That's really interesting and really good. Today I was at IOP, intensive outpatient, and we were learning about the cognitive model and that basically emotional hangovers are real, but other things about basically I'll just take you through a quick note. It was basically situation to a thought to emotion to behavior. That's the cognitive model. But the situation, something happens. Then you have a thought. The situation is interpreted. The emotion, and I drew a little heart by it, emotion, a feeling occurs as a result of the thought, and then behavior, an action in response to the emotion. And I was in there talking about basically, I can be an emotional or impulsive reactor, but I really have to get more to an intelligent or informed response, like being responsive instead of reactive. And they say that a lot of people that struggle with addiction struggle with that. And they were saying that when these cravings come, it's a disease of the brain, and science is actually showing it now. It's a disease of choice or no choice at times. And these cravings, you might find this interesting. I did it with Amy the other day. They were showing, basically they studied the brain, someone going through thirst. And they basically measured that in a comparison of cravings. A craving to have thirst when you're dehydrated and had no water for 3 days was about the size of a baseball. If they do this comparison, not in your brain, but just the size of a baseball. Someone that was starving or fasting for 3 weeks, that craving was the size of a basketball. But the craving to drugs and alcohol whenever someone is going through withdrawal, can you guess what the size of that was? I'm not giving you much to go off of.
David's genitals.
David's genitals.
Call back.
Call back. He's a pro.
Thank you.
He's a pro. He's a handsome gentleman, professional. Now both genitals or just one testicle?
Left testicle.
Okay.
No. That's 70% of the time is lower in men.
Yeah, it was the size.
Bigger ball. Which ball of yours?
The more you know.
Are you lefty?
My right's bigger. Really? I think. Yeah, my right's bigger. Is that good?
I don't know. Don't look at me.
I was looking over at Amy.
I know. I guess I should.
Amy.
I think my right's bigger. But no, it's the size of a baseball field.
Oh boy.
For a person that's going through addiction and withdrawals, the cravings that happen are the size of a baseball field. And the reason is because you are supposed to be your dopamine level, for instance, they showed glutamate, all this different stuff. But your dopamine level on your best day is supposed to be like 100 nanograms or nanojoule. I don't know what it is, but nano somethings. And it's supposed to be at about 100. Your best day ever. Best sex, promotion, on vacation, and just the birth of a child. Like all those things in one day, it's supposed to be at about 100. On an average day, you're at a 50. But on a depressed day, your most depressed day, where you lost your job, someone died, all this stuff, you're only at a 40. At a 40. So from a 50 at an average day, you go down to a 40 at the lowest. Best day, 100. When you put certain drugs into your system, they showed meth, for instance, it takes you to 1,100. 1,100 in comparison to your best day ever at a 100. Wow. Naturally.
Wow.
So you're putting these substances in your body and all of a sudden, it's like performance enhancing drug for your brain, right? Like, I mean, it's just over 1,000, or I think some of the other drugs are at like 700, 800. And you take those drugs away. Now, all of a sudden, the human brain is sitting at 5 or 10 on the dopamine scale. So below your worst day ever at a 40, now the addict is now trying to replenish from having a 5, 10, 15, 20, which is sitting at below the worst day ever. I'm very grateful that I don't think I've absolutely like shot out my dopamine receptors and production and all that stuff.
The pendulum swings, and that's so coming back to kind of a point that we were talking about before of like, what's like the ideal way to, for fitness or movement or exercise or anything. I mean, I think it's consistent with addiction. It's consistent with nutrition. It's consistent with like a general, like wholeness, having regular bouts, infusions of movement throughout the day is the key. When you go through that like big blowout, whatever workout thing, and then, or maybe no working out for a while, and then like this self-hate, or judgment that builds up. And then maybe you go into this like binging state, and then you're like, oh no, I feel like worse. That's like, oh, fuck it. It doesn't even matter. I'm a piece of shit. Then you binge again, and then you go deeper, darker. It's like that wild roller coaster ride of, that we think and the way we feel and produce our neurochemistry. Our fitness and our movement is piggybacking on the way that we produce ourselves, and exercise, being like as releases a bunch of endorphins. It's kind of like, similar to like taking morphine, essentially, like makes you feel good. So if you have an opiate addiction, like exercise might be an interesting direction to go. Yeah.
They said that, well, interesting fact for you. Did you know that a person with addiction, especially to opiates, should stop having dairy and taking calcium supplements because in your stomach, the chemical that's made is in the morphine family. So it can create or triggers for opiates. So they say at least limit it, monitor it, or don't just go to a ton of ice cream and dairy and taking a calcium pill. Because that's going to trigger you to have these cravings.
Have you heard of the rat park study? It was done in British Columbia. I think it was done in Vancouver.
In a park of rats?
Yeah. So there's the common narrative that we hear about drug addiction just being like, we're so vulnerable to drugs. If you give a rat a bunch of cocaine, it'll just, and put it into a cage and give it cocaine, it's just going to like throw his life away and just blow all the cocaine until it dies. That's a rat in a blank room with a rat wheel with some bullshit rat food from a lab. If you give a rat park, which is what they did in Vancouver, it was BC, I'm pretty sure it was Vancouver. They gave it, like a rat girlfriend and a rat pool and like, a rat Netflix and rat, like, all the things that would make a rat happy. I don't know if they actually had rat Netflix, but like they gave them a bunch of cool stuff to play with, and they just really like let's just like really, just make this like a desirable place for a rat. Suddenly they might like nibble at the cocaine every now and again, like just a bump, but they're not infatuated with it. It's kind of like, oh yeah, like cool, whatever, cocaine. I'm like not that impressed by it.
Yeah.
But when we live a, fairly, there's so many different complex hallways or paths to go around with addiction. I think a lot of it, I think a lot of it I don't know about. I'm not an expert about, so I'm not going to try and make any kind of suggestions about it. But a big part would be if you're living this vapid, banal, blank, just like artificially blue lit, underslept, you're getting nutrition, but it's like Alan Watts calls it like eating the menu, but not the meal.
Wow.
Like a lot of the nutrition that we're getting, it's still leaving us hungry.
Yeah.
So it's like if you eat a bunch of cardboard in the shape of pizza or in the shape of beef liver, it's like you didn't actually get those essential fatty acids and the vitamins and minerals
from the pizza.
Well,
no, avocado pizza.
Oh yeah, from the avocado pizza.
No, you're right. I agree with you.
And so when a person's living a life where it's like, okay, like there's this deep, insatiable kind of like void, which I experience personally. I don't typically go into, using any hard drugs so much historically, but I do know a sensation. I can't speak for anybody else's experience, but like this insatiability, and I think that a lot, like we all just watched The Matrix, and that's kind of like what Neo was going through. It's just like, can't sleep at night, and like you have this itching, scratching, gnawing thing that you want more.
Yeah, a lot of these 12-step like programs and treatment facilities, they say you have to have a sufficient substitute, right? You take the drugs and alcohol away, you better have a life that's worth living,
right,
and being sober for, or you'll go back out.
Totally.
And now there is a disease of the brain that sometimes people can have all of that. Like for instance, me, I had a great relationship with Amy. I love her so much. And I had the more of a support system than most ever will have the opportunity for. And I don't take that for granted. I absolutely love it. I love the support system I have. I'm so grateful for it. And I realize that I'm very privileged and to have that opportunity of people in my life like you They could call up and say, hey, I'm having a craving right now. I need to go work out. I need to go get in nature, things like that. But still,
maybe it's an opportunity to be with the thing. And sometimes maybe the nature and the workout and all that stuff can just be kind of like a workaround as opposed to like a work in. And again, addiction, I'm way out of my depth with the conversation, but reactionary behavior and anxiety and just, sensations like that, in my experience, when I have those moments, oftentimes the best thing that I can possibly do, like a pretty consistent foolproof solution, is to go for a run or get outside and do all those things that are just so darn healing. And, there's another potential direction to be tinkered with. It's just like, and I heard someone say one time, never waste a trigger. So like if you have a moment where there's like, I feel like I'm like, I'm really pissed off, or I feel anxious, or I feel like I want to, any of the things that's, not productive behavior in my life. Another option is to just sit and be with it.
Yeah. And
actually take part in the process. You can almost like gamify it, like gamify the process of self-observation.
Well, I love that. Never waste a trigger. And then one of the things they were telling us, and obviously you just did intuitively, and also because this is what you're so good at, is like anytime those triggers come up, do something about it. Either sit with it, observe it, see what is it wanting you to do and play the tape forward, or stretch, move, yoga, work out, drink some water, get some sleep, have a great conversation, read a good book, like all these different things. But I think that your book, has been inspiring to so many, and it's going to continue to help many more. I want people to go check out this book. I know that you have short time because I'm not short time, but we'll come to a close and respect your time because you're getting ready to go to LA and promote the book. And, but one thing that I would love to state, because we're good friends, we see each other often. You're one of my favorite people. Is that Amy and I are going to be, hopefully, we found an inspiring video on Amy's TikTok that a woman's doing roller skating. So Amy and I we're just switching it up. That's what you love to do, is switch it up. Try this when we're in the gym on it. We're switching things up. I think a great gift for us in 2022 would be Acro Yoga. Can you let some people in on what? I mean, I got the deepest stretch of my life. Wrapping it up that way, like just experimenting, getting out of your comfort zone, trying new things, the benefits of that. And I would love for Amy and I to get to do some Acro Yoga.
Oh, yeah, we can do that for you, for sure. Yeah. My buddy, Jason Niemer, he lives here in Austin as well. He's the co-founder of Acro Yoga. He actually has a book coming up, I think, later on this month. And Acro Yoga, essentially, it's like a combination of, so there's the acrobatic part, then the yoga, getting into stretchy positions and such. It's a partner-based practice where you're essentially, it's like, the simplest way to describe it is like doing an airplane with your kid, or with your dad.
Yeah.
But then from there, you can add, when you're flipping somebody upside down, it takes them out of their like typical protective mechanisms, I guess is the easiest way to say it, because they have no orientation to what's normal. And so it's just a beautiful way to decompress the spine. And, you can, if you're with somebody that's well-versed with acro, like they're good acro yogi, it can really flip your world around.
Oh, it did mine. I was in the air. I think we've done it twice now or something, or maybe more.
Yeah.
But I was in the air over 10 minutes at 260 pounds. Another man had me as like a wrecking ball.
It's just stacking bones.
Yeah.
So think about, that's if you can stack a 260 pound, I'm lighter than, I'm like 215. So I can comfortably stack someone much larger than you.
Yeah.
On my arms would be harder. But my legs, it's really no problem, because your joints, when they're aligned, when they're integrated, when they're stacked, your skeletal system is just so darn strong, and so it's within that, it's the same concept of the way that you stand, or the way that you sit, or the way that you breathe, or the way that you communicate. If you can find a more balanced orientation of all of the joints and the connective tissue and the fascia and, the lymph and the cardiovascular and the nervous, is like all of those all of those tubes and pipes and systems, they need spaciousness and they need alignment. And when they come into that alignment, they find that spaciousness, and suddenly life gets a lot easier. And that's a similar concept with like that moment of acro, being able to pick a big, heavy person up. It's just finding that proper aligned. I'm not just saying that because the aligned method. I mean, that's maybe why I call it that. But I mean, literally, like you're in alignment. Suddenly you can do things that you would think to be impossible. And that's the whole thing. Like we're capable of so much more than I think most of us have come to believe, because for the most part, the teachers that we have, at least the teachers that I had, weren't really that well oriented physical creatures.
Yeah. Well-rounded.
And
aligned.
Yeah. And like they're the lives of the people that we're looking up to for the most part, at least in school systems. And I've got nothing but love for school systems. But for the most part, it's like they're coming from the same model, coming from the model of, okay, we're building this curriculum. I'm sitting around a boardroom, and I've got a flat desk and I've got these chairs and we're all hunched around. We got our computers. We're saying, okay, let's like type in like what these kids need. And so it's like the medium itself is the issue.
Yeah, it's limited.
And so when Albert Einstein, his other quote, he said something along the lines of like, you can't fix a problem with the same thinking that produced it, or however he said that, paraphrase. So it's like coming out of that and, being willing to choose your own path and being willing to follow your own intuition and being willing and confident and sovereign enough to do what feels right. And if you do follow that, I think that's our compass. And for the most part, you'll probably spend more time outside. You'll probably hang out with some people more than other people. You'll probably end up maybe even switching vocations because you start to pay attention to the way this immense amount of information that your body's continually conveying to you. If you start to be still with that, notice the way that you breathe, notice the way that you feel when that person walks in the room.
I think, Amy, I'm going to ask if you have a question in closing, but I think you gave me a final thought on, and I'm going to have one more question, but for me in my life, I was so out of alignment and addiction and overcompensating by becoming a fighter. And it was my outlet and it helped me a lot find some passion, but it wasn't purpose. When I got to Africa for the first time and I was in the rainforest and I was with these hunter gatherers, all of a sudden I felt like this purpose, not just fighting against people, but fighting for people. I felt my soul coming into alignment and now being able to fight for them. Like that even adds more alignment to now I get to use that, share their story, all this stuff. But I've never been at more peace and ease and comfort in my life than I have been more like what we were probably supposed to be or how we were supposed to live.
Well, there's no supposed.
Well, you're right about that. Not supposed, but I just mean getting back to roots of humanity and not being so like hearing the birds sing every morning and watching the sun come up and dancing and sitting around the fire as the sun went down and telling stories and having community. And what I mean by that, in these last 2-3 weeks of my life, I've honestly never been happier, even more so than while I was there, because now it's like back to my roots here, stateside, and living a happy, healthy life. But I think it's just a really good reminder that maybe one day in our dream house, we'll have a toilet out in nature.
Gotta have a toilet in nature. Are you kidding me?
With a bidet, warm bidet instead of ice cold.
But so the supposed thing, just think and feel how that feels when you think of, okay, we are supposed to be we're supposed to be outside more often. We're supposed to be in, more, I don't know, maybe healthy, supportive relationships, or we're supposed to do work that lights us up and makes us feel on purpose. If I'm supposed to do that, it kind of like denatures the life out of the thing. And suddenly I have this other father figure holding their hand in the back of my collar. They're saying, okay, you're supposed to go take a walk. Yeah. It's like, shit, we killed it again.
Yeah, that's so good. It's all about balance, as Amy loves to say, and you. I mean, it's just
we get it
too. Yeah,
they're trying to tell me that like that add up.
It's like, hey, you don't have to be sober.
No,
you get to be sober and find a better life.
Yeah. whatever you want.
Yeah.
There's no wrong decision. It's just opportunities.
I love that. Amy, did you have any questions in closing?
Not exactly a question, but just one thing I wanted to kind of circle back to that I was thinking about was when you were talking about when we move in our body and then we feel stronger and feel good, and it has that mental aspect to it. Like if our body's feeling good, we're feeling good. But so many times we're just taking that for granted, and we're not even in our body enough to know it feels good until it feels bad.
Yeah.
And then we're like, shit. Why didn't I appreciate that? And I think that I don't even know if this is a question, but just something to speak to that you can speak to just about taking the time to tune into, wait, I'm actually feeling pretty good right now, and getting in touch with that when it's actually happening rather than not noticing it.
I just did a podcast on mine with a gal called Tamar Geller, and she is like a dog trainer to like everybody, like Tony Robbins and Oprah and all sorts of fancy people. And she's really, really great. I think you guys would really love getting to have her on here as well at some point if you want to. But that's her approach to dog training, is being in celebration of all the things the dog is doing right. And so I just got to hang. You guys met Nala, the little Pomeranian creature, little creature of love. I take care of her when her parents away or on occasion. And when we're together, I'm like, I have such a great time with her because one, she creates a feedback to me to emote. So I'm with this little dog.
She looks like Boo, by the way.
Yeah, she's great.
Create a visual.
She's great. So she's really supportive for me, or dogs are supportive for us if we have that relationship with them, because they're inducing emotion, they're inducing movement, they're inducing voice tonality. A dog comes in the room, you're like, you get all excited about the dog.
Yeah, we had a dog in here for a little
That's
while.
literally turning your endocrinology. It's turning your neurochemistry. It's causing you to move and respirate and breathe different. Just the existence of that dog being in the room. The dog we were playing with before, I was squatting down on the ground like that. Like the dog's existence took me through this whole movement practice. Mm-hmm. So that's really interesting. So one component is you become the shape of your environment. Place a dog into the environment, you form to the dog. Place a pull-up bar, which we have a chapter in the Align Method book about the value of hanging.
Yep, decompression.
It's a very, very like low hanging fruit. That's unintended pun. Is just hanging each day. You throw a pull-up bar into a doorway that you walk through with regularity. Every time you walk through, it's like you're compelled. It's like your hands are lifted up over your head for you. There's nothing to do. It's like you put the device there. It's like parenting. I don't have a kid, but from talking to parents, it seems like most of them are kind of in alignment with this. You just present them the options and be a good person. Be supportive, be loving, create a safe container, present options.
Yeah.
I don't know that you can do anything else. I'd be curious your opinion about that.
Even just when you were talking about just move consistently all day long, like I watch my kid do that. So it rubs off the other way too.
Right, you're training each other.
You've seen Gigi. She's nonstop motion. And the other day she FaceTimed me and she was like, here's how I'm getting on and off my bed right now. And it was like a full back walkover, like onto the bed and off. I was like, she's just sitting around doing that. And what if we did that?
And she in part likely is getting that spice for life or joie de vivre or exploratory attitude, perhaps from you. There's also maybe the argument that she's just like a Polaroid picture and you just kind of shake it and she's going to be the same regardless. No way to really know. Probably there is some research around like identical twins, but I mean, who knows what the heck's going on with kids, but, in response to the being supportive for like, I guess maybe like our wins, and not just focusing on all the reasons that I suck throughout the day. If you're with a dog, so says Tamar Geller, and just, I think general logic, if the dog is walking beside you the way that you want the dog to walk beside you, the dog's doing a good thing. Yeah. It's a great reason to say like, you're such a good dog. Mm-hmm. It's if the dog, it's like all of these different things. If the dog dog could just be quiet. The dog could just be like resting and just chilling. It's just like, man, this dog is just being such a good dog right now. That's a great time to be like, like shower that dog with love. And so getting into that habituation of like, the dog doesn't need to inherently be like running around in a circle or jump, standing on its back legs or doing like some kind of amazing trick to give it a treat or give it some type of love. It could just be generally passively being a good dog. So throughout the day, we're probably generally passively being good people, and so the way that we can say that is just have those moments of like, having, a little moment of loving on yourself or loving on somebody else and be like, oh man, like I love your shirt. Mm-hmm. I love the way you make me feel. I love the like whatever the thing is, I love the glasses, they bring out your eye, like whatever, they're just starting to notice the positive in quotations, because, define positivity, but those aspects of life that make us feel good, mm-hmm. making that a habit to point those out. And then eventually you can't stop seeing them.
Yeah.
As opposed to come from the place of, I just see everything as a threat and life is a war zone and I'm a general and I'm here to kill. Yeah. I'm here to defend. That's a habit. Mm-hmm. Neither is wrong or right. It's great to have generals in the world. It's great to have, whatever, but it's just like, what do you want? Like for me, I'd love to paint my world with at least like the noticing of what's going right.
Yeah.
And then it gains momentum and that becomes who you are. And then you probably become more like that Bukowski free soul type person. So like people just like being around that guy or girl for some reason. It's like, well, because every time they come in the world, in the room, they like paint the room. Everyone kind of relaxes a little bit. Everyone feels a little bit better about themselves. They feel less judged. They feel welcomed. It's not because they came in and brought them like a diamond necklace or something, or they brought them a watch, or
tacos help.
Tacos are helpful. And presents are different. People have different love languages, but you don't necessarily need to have like quantifiable gifts to make people feel away.
No, absolutely not. And I think you have that quality, Aaron. You're so comfortable with yourself. And I really think that every time I've met you, you're very much like that.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a process.
It's a practice, actually. It's just like you were talking about. It's these muscles. It's the muscle of awareness. It's the muscle of like living in that space of what do I want and fostering that and moving that direction.
And then the last thing, what's interesting, and this is the part of I'll probably spend the rest of my life just continuing to beat this horse, which is kind of a strange analogy. But the interesting thing is how is your body moved when you feel safe? How is your body moved when you feel loved? How is your body moved when you feel afraid? None of these are right, wrong, moralistic judgment, fear, love, lust. It's all just stuff. It's not like I like it. I'm okay with myself when I feel this way. I'm not okay with myself when I feel that way.
Yeah.
Just objectively pull back and examine what is my physical, musculoskeletal, structural expression of these different emotions, and just check it out.
Just check it out. Yeah. No, it's true. I 100% agree with that. My like life phrase lately has just been, I take it in stride, and I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna accept this is life. Yeah. I think you and I had a conversation about that when Justin was coming out of treatment, and I was like, this is life. This is life.
Yeah.
So what are you gonna do with it?
What are you gonna do?
Let's take it in stride and get aligned as we take it in stride. One of the things I have noticed is that I just love being around both of you. And thank you, Aaron, for putting this book. We are pretty great. You are. Yep. You are my man. People can come get your book now.
Yep.
They should get your book now, because I think they will really notice through the pages of this book that their life, if they allow it, if they align with this book, they will notice that their life is becoming more aligned, that their life is getting better, and that you are contributing in a deep and meaningful way to their life. As you guys get your Instagram stories. We are wrapping up. Thank you for being here, Aaron Alexander. You are a beautiful man, Peach. A work of art. A masterpiece, better than marble.
I mean, you really are like art. Your body is, I mean, it really is. Everyone should go follow you at Align Podcast.
Go look at his body. I'm not really a fan of the male body. I mean, I am.
Yes, you are.
I'm sorry, I am. But yours is exceptional.
Don't need to be sorry.
Yours is exceptional. What I mean is I'm not attracted to the male body. But yours is one that I hear often people are attracted to.
You ever had any gay dreams?
I haven't. Is this how we're ending? I honestly haven't.
Really? Amy? Gay dreams?
He doesn't really have any gay dreams.
No, you.
Do I have gay dreams? Of course.
Nice.
I'm bi. I'm
Free
bi.
spirit.
I'm like a
bisexual.
I'm a pretty open.
Holding it down.
Pan, I prefer. I'm
I don't
more
even
than
know what
bi.
these words mean, but that's a fun way to end the show, I guess. No
what
gay
are you?
dreams.
What about you? We didn't.
Sure, I had gay dreams.
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah, good.
Woke up feeling guilty.
You felt guilty?
Oh, sure.
Aw.
This morning?
Now I'm fine with
That's
it.
just societal.
I think I've had like
conditioning.
3 gay dreams.
Mhm.
Oh, I thought you meant this morning. I was this whole time. I was like, whoa, that's why I asked.
No, I think I've had 3 throughout
Yeah.
sporadically. Where it's like,
Mhm.
oh.
No
I went
hate.
through a period of really questioning like what is learned, what like nature versus nurture. And so much of, especially if you look into like Spartan times and Greco-Roman times where it was like, it was actually the alpha thing to, whatever, bend over a dude.
Oh.
So it was like an alpha beta relationship. And so it's this very interesting thing. Relationship dynamics, monogamy, polygamy, or like all the different versions that exist,
Yeah.
whatever it's called when women have multiple husbands, homosexuality,
I forget.
pansexuality, all the different things. So much of it is cultural indoctrination, I think.
Polyandry, I think. Is
Maybe that's what
for
it
women.
is.
Honey,
But
you're
anyways.
into Spartans?
I'm into Spartans. I am a Greco-Roman national champion in wrestling.
No, you're into
See?
Stoics. I get them
I'm in the
confused.
Stoics.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Stoic philosophy. And
Alpha,
hey,
alpha beta.
this is the way we're wrapping up.
Yeah, we are.
I love
It
you.
is-
Have a great trip in LA. I hope people follow you at the Align podcast.
Just a line
Align
podcast.
Align. I mean,
We'll
yeah,
have all
at
the links
Align
up.
podcast.
All the links.
All the links will
And
be
the
up.
book is The Align Method.
Boom.
It's Aaron Alexander. He is such an incredible man.
Thank you.
Thank you, my man.
They can go to get the book, they can go to thealignbook.com. We'll take them directly to the
Great.
place. And
I'll
that'll just go
include that
straight
in
to
the intro as well.
Babushka.
The Align book.
Thealignbook.com.
Thealignbook.
Cool.
.com.
Thebomb.com.
Bomb.com.
All right, man. Thanks for being here. Can't wait to give you a hug.
Appreciate you.
Thank you for tuning in to Overcome with Justin Wren with my beautiful Amy Edwards, who I want to marry. And
What an ending.
yeah, what an ending with Aaron Alexander. Wow.
Yeah.
Just
to recap, too.
a dream man
He-
in
well,
many
yes.
different people's eyes.
In his own, actually.
Yeah, his own. But yeah, go ahead, please.
I was just going to recap like how to find his book. It's totally worth getting. It's
It is.
easy. It's just a quick guide with some really
You can
good
pick up the book
broke
and
down
read
chapters.
anything in it, and
Mhm.
you're going to get something. You don't have to start front to back. You can skip around.
has pictures of him too.
There's pictures of this beautiful
There's
man.
one where he
Peach.
looks like he's doing, what'd you say? It's some sort of 80s dance.
Yeah, flash mob scene
Yeah.
for us, a good stretch. But here it is, Aaron Alexander, The Align Method.
Mhm.
At
So just
Align Podcast on Instagram.
alignpodcast.com has the links to his book. It has his website and all that. I mean, has his podcast and all that. Or go to thealignbook.com and it'll take you to his website too. So
Yeah, and you can also reach us at overcomepodcast@gmail.com, and you can share your overcome story with us, and we will be sharing those from time to time. We'd love to hear the challenges you've overcome, how this podcast has helped you overcome, and what you're looking forward to overcoming in this new year of
ooh, I like that.
2022.
What are you looking forward to overcoming in this new
Yeah,
year?
we
And how
all
you
are in
doing it?
process of
Mhm.
overcoming. Always. Just part of the human experience.
Mm-hmm.
And so remember, please, as we wrap up this podcast, you, me, we have overcome 100% of our darkest days. Now, you and me and Amy and Aaron, we get to share our light and share our strength with the world.
Hey, don't forget to send your overcome stories to overcomepodcast@gmail.com. And also rate, review, subscribe, and follow Overcome with Justin Wren.